Friends, Erich Andreas, your guitar sage here. Robbie, thank you so much for letting me be on your channel here. I so appreciate it, man.
That's my pleasure.
So we just did a video that went up to my channel, right? It was called the One Chord Ninja Chop Build or something like that. But essentially, Robbie has been showing me some great loopy-doopy stuff here with his looper pedal and showing me how he develops and if you will, arranges and produces different parts for a song or a vamp or what have you. And we got on the subject of talking about how folks who are new to this, how they could develop this and understand how to do this from a one chord vamp, right? And to develop their chops and to creating some killer ninja, warrior chops here on the neck, right? And so the first video that we did was because I had said to Robbie, just taking a one chord vamp and just playing that is great. It's one chord, but it's not very inspiring because it doesn't move anywhere. So that first video, right, we talked about how to take that one chord and create a little movement in it just by moving one note or so. And then we wanted to do this other video for you guys because we wanted to further this, like, well, what can we do with that now? So I wanted us to get inside Robbie's mind and how he thinks about this in regards to, okay, those melodies in the chord are moving, and then what specifically would he play, and then why? Because if you understand the why, then you guys can do this yourselves with your own chords, with your own bits. You want to expound on that a little bit,
Yeah,
Robbie?
absolutely. So a lot of the time I say to guys, all right, so let's say you've got a chord that you want to embellish, which we did in the other video. Super simple, but those embellishments can be incredibly musical. So don't, discard simple for being not good, right? Usually they're the better ideas. Then, okay, now that we've established that and we maybe have a groove and everything else, what would we play over that? And I always say to guys, okay, we played an A major chord. Obvious choice would be A major pentatonic over that. And what I say to guys is, if you know the chord shape and then you reference the scale over it, you know where all the chord tones are. Now the chord tones are your resolution points, which are the strongest notes to stay on or resolve to anytime you're playing a melody. So I'll just kind of prove that a little bit, all right? So let's just reference the scale. So I'm playing A major pentatonic, which is your F sharp minor pentatonic, in position. Okay, there's my resolution. There's my chord. Now, if I look at my scale shape and I put all of the notes that are on this fret across the fret wire,
Right.
here, I can see that that's where my scale tones are.
Right, yeah.
And if I do that, I can see where my chord tones are.
Yeah.
Correct? So they're in the scale, aren't they? So what I say to guys is, all right, so what we need to do first of all is target each one of those chord tones.
Yes.
Because if you do, it's going to be super strong. So you can play anything before those, and when you land on those and stay there, it's going to make sense. So what I'll do is
Kind of like a period at the end of a sentence, or when you're speaking, there's always a cadence that comes down, so that it's the end of the sentence, or a question, right? It might be like, "What's your name?" and that will go up. So that cadence is what's happening. I always refer to that, if you will, like resting on those notes, because if you're resting on another note, it wants to pull back to one of the chord tones, right?
Yeah, so if it's not in the chord, it's going to have tension.
Right.
All right, so it's going to want a resolution to that. And we'll try that. First of all, let me put down just a little vamp on, and again, that's your A major. I'm just playing it like this, guys, for purposes, all right? So I'm going to vamp this. I'm going to play super simple from the scale. I'm going to target the root note, this note here. Now to the third. Hear how strong that is? Now to the fifth. So I'm already developing a melody, aren't I? Okay, let's do it in reverse. And okay, we can go from there.
That's something that anybody could play today. And one thing I want to denote what you're doing here, because I've heard a lot of people, myself included, is when they're trying to play on top of a chord, they end up a lot of times just playing too much of the chord and arpeggiating it, and it just sounds like you're just kind of arpeggiating the chord, as opposed to playing a lick. But you did this thing where you said, so he started off on one of the notes of the chord, played a note that wasn't in the chord but is in the scale, and then ended on another note so there's no way musically that would not work. It's absolutely impossible that it wouldn't work. And each time you did that, so the third, the 1, the 3, and the 5 of the scale, and then you threw in that other note, and it makes it sound just like, okay, this guy knows what he's talking about. Well, it's as simple as that.
Absolutely, and so I'm developing a melody. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to play a solo, keeping it that simple. Right. But what I'm doing is I'm going to go to the root, the 3rd, the 5th, back to the root, and that will be my 8-bar solo. Okay, yeah. Keeping it that simple, right? So let's just check that out. So then you can then make it more.
And that's like every country solo that's on the radio right now, like literally that, and the melody of the song.
Well, and you play it more like this, right?
Yeah.
Right. And it's the Stones as well. It's all of those things. So you guys have probably heard that a million times, that kind of approach. And it sounds solid because they're chord tones.
Yeah.
All right. So that's a super simple way of doing it. And then, of course, we enhance that with more phrases and more notes and everything else. But your target tones make sense, don't they? Mm-hmm. Now, if you develop that vamp, let's say you're adding in the sus like we did in the other video, you're adding and suggesting melody purely by putting it in the chord. Mm-hmm. All right, so if I was to do this, I'm suggesting a melody. Which then gives me an opportunity to develop my melody as a top line as opposed to being in the chord. Mm-hmm. So let me do that, I'll record that as a vamp, okay? So. So I'm going to now outline that little change and create a melody.
Very melodic, sounds like it's matching the chords perfectly.
Yeah, thank you. And then from there, if I want to add complexity to that, I can actually put a harmony on top of that simple melody. Mm-hmm. All right? Yeah. Should I do it?
Yeah, I'd love to hear that.
So I'm gonna record that simple melody, guys. All right. Actually, I'm going to record the vamp again because it needs to be a bit longer because I developed the melody. Sure, okay. So let me record the vamp first. Okay. Now I'm going to put a harmony on these two notes. Now that could be a vocal thing, it can be just a guitar thing.
Yeah.
So from simplicity and a suggestion of a melodic change,
Right.
we can either follow it, enhance it, harmonize it. It gives us more breadth to our music, and what we're doing is we're taking notes in music and actually saying something instead of just playing a bunch of stuff.
I love that.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So I think guys at home, you can probably follow that super simply, right? And you could hear it's musical. It might not be the most impressive piece of music you've ever heard, but I'm keeping it simple so that you can follow it and understand. Then you do what you want to do with that. Does that make sense? Yeah. So always look for the chord tones first. It's where you'll want to rest your phrases.
So if I'm catching everything you're saying here, you know, keeping it to one specific chord is going to allow you to not be so stressed out that you have to follow all these chords as the chord progression is moving. You just have one chord it's playing over and over again. So this really allows you to breathe and to start developing those licks around that chord. Mm-hmm. Now, this is one chord, but what happens, you know, I mean, what happens when this moves across the neck?
That's right.
Right?
Yeah.
So you're just taking the same licks, right? And you're just playing them in different keys and what have you. Exactly. So really you're talking about the same licks. And you experience a major chord pretty often in music, don't you?
It's everywhere. Yeah, and you know, and that's the thing, guys. You know, when you think about music that's been written over hundreds of years, we've got 12 notes. Mm-hmm. Look at the permutations we've come up with, and we haven't finished yet. Yeah. And, you know, sometimes I'll listen to a song, it could be Alison Krauss, you know, Nothing at All. Mm-hmm. Basically 3 chords, there's a few other ones in there, but basically it's that. And then so many, Say by John Mayer, for example, is 4 chords. Mm-hmm. But the lyrics are great, the melodies are great, you know, the rhythms are great, he's got a great voice. Mm-hmm. These are all the things that make music a whole. Yeah. We're just a part of that whole. Yeah. And I think if you start thinking in terms of that, you're just a cog in there. Yeah. You're a cog in the watch.
That's amazing. Yeah, super good stuff, Robbie.
Thank you.
We should do a whole course on this.
We could. Yeah, absolutely.
Robbie and I did do a course on this recently. I say we did. It was Robbie. He did it here in the studios here. But nonetheless, if they stick around your channel here, we'll announce it on your Guitar Stage channel as well. But it's basically this idea, right? Not just of the one chord, of just using one chord, but developing chops around looping in the whole 9 yards. But the place to start is with that one chord vamp, right?
It is, you know, and the course, you know, we're training you to phrase, and so we're using the looper, showing you how to use your chords with the looper, and then what you do with that afterwards melodically. So all of it's about phrasing, because you have to phrase a rhythm part as much as you do have to phrase a single note line. Indeed. And you've got to think about what that looks like. So if you're saying to the band members, all right, I've got this idea, and you don't know how long that is, how do you translate that to them? Yeah. Because they'll go, well, how many bars is that? And you go, I don't know. Like I did, right? I had that idea, I'm like, oh, if I play that melody, I haven't recorded enough. Right. So I said to you, I'm going to record more so I can get the idea on it. Yes, yeah. So you have to have an understanding of measures of music, the notes that go in the appropriate scales with the appropriate chords, and then how do you phrase that to actually make music? Beautiful. And that's, I think, is the key elements, you know. Yeah. Dig deeper. Yeah, I love it. Yeah. Thank you so much again, Robbie. Always a pleasure working with you and having you show me this stuff. It's great. Thanks so much for letting me be on your channel too. Hey, come anytime. Yeah. As long as you let me on yours. Yeah, well, you know I will. And we'll put I'll tell you what, we'll put the link for that first video that we did in the description of this video. So if you guys want to check that out, and I highly suggest you looking at that one because it's going to help you to do the pre-part that we did today. Good reference for both, yeah. Yeah, all right. Thanks so much. Thanks, guys.